Well, hello again and welcome in. Wherever you are today and wherever you're listening from, I'm so happy to have you over to feast upon God's Word together. Get your plate ready today and take a seat. It's the 44, which is Matthew 4:4. Man cannot live on bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. Let's eat. I'm your host, Jed Yancey, and welcome in today to episode 31 of season 4 of the 44, where first and foremost here today as we start, any of you teachers out there, I just want you to know, praying about your return to work, praying that you've had a restful enough summer to get back after it in the classroom in preparation for the kids and doing all that you do, which is so much. And just want you to know I've got you on my mind this week as you prepare to welcome students back here in about a week and a half, I guess. And really it's kind of all of that, the return back for teachers that's motivated some of the eating we'll do today. Because for about 12 years, that night before the return back to work for me from a summer off, and most especially that night before the welcome back for students and the first day of school, I would even say in all the years that I was a student and going through school, that the night before the first day of school, I just never slept. And maybe you can relate to that. You know, the night before something big happens tomorrow, or maybe it's something new that's on the tomorrow, or it's not always that. Could be other things that are just on your mind. Could be, finances, could be a relationship, could be your kids, might be the death of a loved one, could be something going on in the church, like just life in general. I mean, what we can all relate to is those moments where you lay your head down at night, and no matter what it is that is tomorrow, your mind is racing and your thoughts are robbing you of rest. And so I want to start right there. I mean, first and foremost, I guess, like, why is it that we can't sleep sometimes? Or better yet, for you, to make it personal, what is it for you that robs you of sleep and keeps your brain in the on position? I was doing some reading on sleep and sleep patterns, and most of what I took from my reading, which won't surprise you, is that the cause or the why behind our sleepless nights is usually stress related or some kind of anxiety we have. And those are the leading culprits behind our sleeplessness and laying our head down at night in a dark room only to be wide-eyed and staring at the ceiling or the ceiling fan. But what is really actually going on in our heads? Why does that one worry, that one stress, that one thing I'm anxious about, that one thing that is tomorrow, or maybe it is right now, feel like it's just on a loop and it's just playing over and over and over again in my head, and I lose sleep because of it? Well, with whatever it is, we often categorize our sleepless nights by saying, I had a lot on my mind. If I have a conversation with my wife the next day when I wake up and she says, "How'd you sleep?" And I say, "Terrible. I was tossing and turning. I had a lot on my mind." And I was thinking, while that's an appropriate figure of speech, based on some of my reading about sleep, it's also a neurological reality. Like, the science behind that is when we're stressed, we're anxious over whatever it is, our brain's amygdala, which is a new word for me, but that's the part of the brain that processes emotions. It goes into overdrive. And it signals the release of all of these stress hormones, which keeps us alert, keeps us ready, keeps us wide-eyed and staring at the ceiling when we should be sleeping, which is awesome should there happen to be an intruder come into your home on the night when this happens, but not so great when you're trying to sleep. Now, not to get too scientific here, because that's not what this is all about, but most of what I could read also says that at the same time that's going on, the prefrontal cortex of our brain, which is our brain's logical part, really just struggles to calm things down enough to where you can go to sleep. Now, normally this part of our brain helps to regulate our emotions. But when we're stressed and we're anxious, the amygdala takes over and really just steals the show, which creates the loop or the cycle where I worry and I'm stressed and I'm anxious and my brain's on high alert and I can't go to sleep and I worry more, and that same loop just gets played on repeat, which leaves us tossing and turning in the night. Now, there's a lot more I could add here, but I'll leave it at that because of what I really want us to eat on today is a potential solution. Like, what is the fix inside of these moments? How do we break this cycle when these nights happen? I mean, is there anything in God's word that can help in moments like these? And if so, what can we learn about finding sleep on sleepless nights when we're stressed and we're anxious and we got this, that, and the other on our mind? Now, honestly, I thought a lot here about going the Psalm 23 route amongst so many other Psalms we could point to. But here today, I want us to eat on Psalm 4, which is one of those Psalms, a Psalm of David that's, really hard to put your finger on which moment over the course of his life has got him up and tossing and turning and losing sleep. But regardless of that specific situation he has on his mind here, there's a lot we can learn from it when we're stuck inside of these sleepless nights. It's a psalm that's often called, like in my Bible, the heading is an evening psalm because it's a prayer for peace and a prayer for rest. And if you just take a second to consider the life of David, in my mind, David was not a man that was a stranger to some of these sleepless nights that we have as well. Whether he was fleeing enemies or he was wrestling with his own mistakes and his own sin, like this, we're talking about a guy that can relate. And so in Psalm 4, a lot of what we read here in this evening prayer is David finding a way to trust God and rest. So today I want us to just walk through and eat on this psalm and see how it can help us in our sleepless nights. Let's begin here in verse 1 that reads this way. Answer me when I call to you, O God of my righteousness. You've given me relief when I was in distress. Be gracious to me and hear my prayer. And this is one of those right out of the gate here that should be a no-brainer for us. But do you see how right away David goes to God in prayer? I mean, that's a really important part of this, and I don't want to bypass that. But what is potentially more important for us to eat on here is the very reason why he's going to God in prayer in the first place about whatever it is he's going through and whatever has him, tossing and turning in bed. Like, listen to this again. Answer me when I call to you, O God of my righteousness. You have given me relief when I was in distress. I mean, if we were to infuse some Psalm 23, it would be right here. The Lord is my shepherd. I have all that I need. He lays me down in green pastures. He leads me beside peaceful streams, quiet waters. He renews my strength day by day. You see, whatever it is he has on his heart, whatever it is that's keeping him up, he's taking it to God in prayer because he remembers just how many other times he's had this same kind of sleepless night, and God gave him relief in that stress. What a great place to start, right? I mean, on those sleepless nights we have, yes, go to God in prayer. But the other part of this that is equally important to remember is exactly what David says here. And that is just how many other times God has given you relief. To think on that, like how many times he's delivered, how many other times he led me beside quiet waters. And as I think on those and I meditate on those things, as well as trying to break the cycle of thought that is keeping me up, I'm remembering all of the present blessings in my life, not just those things I can think on in the past, but also the good about what's happening in my life now. Verses 2 and 3 read this way. He goes on, O men, how long shall my honor be turned into shame? How long will you love vain words and seek after lies? But know that the Lord has set apart the godly for himself. The Lord hears when I call to him. So this part of the prayer is so very real for us because honestly, when these nights come upon us, it's usually over something that is going on with someone else. We're stressed, we're anxious about the situation, whatever it might be, with someone else. And so we start to consider all of these what if scenarios, how this and how that, and what about this and what about that. And David right here seems to be saying about man or men that they're running around, they're lying about him, they're talking bad about him. And how often do we stay up late tossing and turning, thinking about how I'm going to respond to this person the next day, how I'm going to respond to that person, or what if I do this, or what if I do that, and rightfully so. But when we go there, where does it lead but to even more of a takeover of the logical side of our brain? And so it is that I see these two verses as kind of like this. Well, I could focus on them over there, or that situation tomorrow, what he said and what she said about me, and how I'm going to respond tomorrow. David says this in verse 3, know that the Lord has set apart the godly for himself, and the Lord hears when I call. I mean, in these moments, I think about how I'm so quick to say to others, the Lord's got you, and the Lord will give you the protection and the security you need in these kinds of moments. But what's more is how we say to others in their moments of sleepless night, give it to God, go to God in prayer, cast your anxieties on him. And yet when it comes to us, we forget that. David says to himself here, know this, that the Lord has got me, and the Lord hears when you call on him. In these moments, we are ultimately presented with a choice. Spend all night inside of this never-ending loop, this cycle of what if this and what if that, and how about this and how about that, while not knowing what change might come at you tomorrow that turns everything you thought about upside down anyways, or count on the fact that we can go to the God of heaven who has blessed us and delivered us and redeemed us and sanctified us and hears us when we cry out to him. Here's verses 4 and 5. Be angry and do not sin. Ponder in your own hearts, on your beds, and be silent. Offer right sacrifices and put your trust in the Lord. This is an interesting one to consider because just how many sleepless nights we spend pondering in our own hearts and minds on our beds, how I can pay back, how I can get back at the one who has given it to me. They did something to me today. They said something, and I'm making a plan for tomorrow. And man, based on my own experiences, this is probably the hardest part of this conversation because we feel good about ourselves when we can build up some hatred and we take on the next day with vengeance on our heart and on our mind because payback is mine, baby. I'm going to give back what was given to me. And yet what I think we see here and what David prays is that rather than putting my trust in myself to fix whatever it is that has me up at night, trust in the Lord. Let him be the one that deals with it. Offer right sacrifices, which is not lying on our beds thinking of all the ways that I'm going to get mine and going to get back at them, but rather having a heart that is broken over what's on your plate while also sometimes, not all the time, recognizing our own part in all that's keeping us up at night. And then verses 6 and 7, as we reach the end here, there are many who say, who will show us some good? Lift up the light of your face upon us, O Lord. You've put more joy in my heart than they have when their grain and their wine abound. You might think at first glance here, or if you're listening upon first listen, like what does that have to do with getting some rest on these nights where I'm tossing and turning? Well, as I read this over and over, I mean, maybe this is you, that many of your sleepless nights are tied to who you are, in that you see the bad side or the dark side of every situation. You think back on all the bad. And in that, I would put it this way, that we have our own expectation of the outcome to be dark and dreary, and in that way, the expected outcome in our mind is always set very low. As David says here, maybe it is that I look around and I see I don't have the amount of grain and the wine around me that they have over there, that she has or he has. So I just lie awake, frustrated with life and about all these other things outside of my current circumstance. And it's right here where it seems to be the case that what helped David on what looks to be his restless, sleepless night is something that so often escapes us. And that is this, that many of the earthly things that we see around us are pretty useless and empty in the first place. And what it should be instead is the joy of relationship with God that provides true and lasting blessing and peace. Again, Psalm 23, a great psalm to infuse right here. The Lord is my shepherd. Forget everything else. If he is my shepherd, like he was David's, I have all that I need. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want that, because I have him. As Jesus talks about this in his Sermon on the Mount, oftentimes these sleepless nights, not that he says that specifically, are tied to where our eyes are and what we're fixated on here rather than what is above and what we have in him. Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount, store up for yourselves treasures in heaven. Keep your eyes there, for where your treasure is, there's where your heart and your mind will be also. And so maybe it is that you can tie your sleepless nights to protecting your earthly treasures, or you're worried or anxious about something in the grand scheme of things that just really doesn't matter. And if that's the case, remember this, exactly what David says here in Psalm 4. God has put more joy in our hearts than we'll ever know what to do with. But then the question becomes, will we allow ourselves to joy in those things rather than lament and worry and stress over the things that are here on this earth? Here as we close, David ends with this. In Psalm 4, last verse, in peace I will both lie down and sleep, for you alone, O Lord, make me dwell in safety. That is the heart of this psalm and this episode, right? David trusts God to hold him up no matter what's going on. And again, that's tough, because in that is surrender and a choice that we have to make to let go of control and actually let him be the one that is close beside us, using his rod and his staff to protect us and comfort us and lead us no matter what. Here as we close, can I just say this? This is not an end-all be-all solution to every sleepless night you come across for the rest of your life. This psalm doesn't mean there will never be stress and never be anxiety in your life, never be anything that keeps you up late at night, because there sure was in David's life. And there will be for us. But here for your 44 today, rather than let the emotions we feel over whatever it is that's going on in our life send us into a spot of tossing and turning at night and wide-eyed and not able to get any kind of peace or rest or sleep, we should learn from this to allow those emotions and those anxieties we feel in our lives to point us to the God of heaven. And remember that we can find sleep and we can find rest and we can find peace because of our relationship with the Lord, who will bring us safely through whatever it is that we face. If the God of heaven is able to walk beside us and deliver us as we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, then surely our great God is able to handle whatever situation has got us awake and worried and losing sleep. Thank you all so much for listening today. I love you guys, teachers. Go get after it this week in your preparation for another great school year. I'll talk to y'all next week. Until then, keep on eating.